Evening. It's now 6 o'clock. And over to Dr. Zanele Bikicha. Dr. Bikicha, over to you.
Thank you. Very good evening to all of you, my colleagues. I'm hoping that I am audible and that you can hear me. We, as the Women's Wing, have embarked on a series of webinars in August that we called the Summer Women's Wing August Takeover because we felt that we must take ownership of our month of August and ensure that we discuss topics that are pertinent and relevant to us as women in medicine, practicing in today's age. Today is the last in the series of the August webinars. Obviously, that's not the last of the work of the Women's Wing. And we have a very, very interesting topic that we're going to be handling today. If you would have seen, we had advertised the session, and we've got a very, very interesting topic. It's saying breaking barriers and building futures. And that is with women doctors leading the way. Very big words, very broad, and it can be discussed in many different contexts. So we are going to be discussing those aspects today. And I'm very glad to announce that we've got a panel of women that I feel not only are we honored to have the privilege of them joining our webinar today, but it's women that personify what we are trying to achieve in our topic of breaking barriers and having women lead the way. We have Dr. Lungi Nyati, who will be with us. We then also have Dr. Nkulu Nokuto, who will be with us, and Dr. Judy Dlamini, who also is one of our speakers. So, colleagues, it's going to be a very interesting webinar, and I'm hoping that we're all going to pick up a few gems and be able to, discuss and pick up those barriers and what we need to do as women to support each other in the workplace, but also make sure that we're deliberate in becoming leadership in the workplace. So, colleagues, the way that this is going to work, we're going to have presentations by our three speakers. And after the presentations by our three speakers, we will then open up the floor for a Q&A session. So please do make sure that while you're listening, you take notes or you write in the chat if there's any queries or questions that you'd like our panel members to address. I will be taking note of that and will ask them at the end of the session when we get to the Q&A part. So please make sure that you're interacting on the chat. Let me then, colleagues, without further ado, welcome our first speaker. We're going to have Dr. Lungi Nyati. Dr. Lungi Nyati is now CEO at Allied, and I was asking when I was, trying to do my research on our speakers. I'm like, so tell me about Ulungi. So Ulungi has come also from your med scheme kind of background and was an executive director there. And I think it was also with Afrocentric. And she was an executive director there and is now with Allied. And they deal with palliative care, and that is now her new area of passion. And it's nice to see that we've got women taking up space and doing these things. So welcome, Dr. Nyati, and we will then give the floor to you as you address us on our first topic for the evening. um, the floor is over to you, Dr. Nyati.
Thank you, Zanele. So great to be with the women in healthcare that are part of Summer. So really great to be here, and I'm really honored to be part of this conversation. Women's Month is always a very interesting month because one gets to speak a lot about women things and gets to reflect on what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a woman working in this industry, what does it take to flourish as a woman in this industry. And I've spent a lot of time this month reflecting on those things and tried to think about what I wish I had learned a little bit earlier in the journey. And this is such a strange thing because one wants to think about what you wish you had known earlier, but then the stuff that has made you who you are some of the hard things. And so it's such a tricky thing to try and save you from the difficulties that some of us have endured. But I do think that there are some things that might make your journey a little easier than ours may have been. I only have 3 points. I'm not doing it in slide because I'd like to chat. I have 3 points with a few nuggets in there. I hope they're nugget full. The first point is this question that has recently become a bigger and bigger question for me. And the question is, what is the work? I've lived life, I guess you all live life believing that because you're a doctor, the work is looking after patients, which is part of the work. Or we live life thinking the work is looking after our family, which is also part of the work. Um, but I think to flourish in our lives, there are other pieces of work that I think are the true work. These are things that relate to what is typically called personal mastery when you go to leadership courses. Everyone will speak about this personal mastery. And personal mastery is about the work that's in here. And to flourish, there's a kind of person that one must become in order to navigate what is in reality a tough world. It's tough in our work, it's tough at home, it's tough. This world is just generally difficult. And as a woman navigating this world, it can be tough too. So personal mastery in my mind is one of the big things. And there are some elements of personal mastery that I don't think get spoken about enough. And these are things like honoring one's feelings, honoring one's thoughts, honoring one's body, and honoring one's boundaries as valid and not override them. So much about the world that we live in, because we're trying to get ahead, because we're trying to be accepted, because we're trying to belong, we override so many things about who we are. And the reality is that the more we do that, the harder it is to be fully yourself. And I don't think that any woman can flourish, any person actually can flourish without the ability of being fully self. Um, because you're probably only ever going to be as brilliant as who you really are. Borrowing other people's strengths is difficult to maintain. You get tired along the way, or you botch it up. And so, learning how to be fully you and fully in who you are, and dealing with the things that inhibit that, we learn over time how to not. How to override our own thoughts because we want to appear a certain way, but it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. One doesn't flourish for a long time before you get tired of doing that. A lot of burnout, I think, exists because of some of these elements. The other thing, I guess, about this personal mastery and what is the work is I particularly like Strengths Finders. There's a book called Strength Finders, and what I like about the premise of Strength Finders is that you will always be better at your strengths than you will be at getting better at your weaknesses. And so many people spend so much time trying to overcome their weaknesses, which has merit. But becoming excellent in your strengths and loving your strengths and living your strengths will always lead to better success. And so, loving the strengths that we have, learning to express it better, express it smarter, I think is one of the key things of success. And that includes our feminine selves. Many women suppress their feminine because it's not celebrated, sometimes in their workplaces. But again, you get tired trying to be a male when all you are is female. And so figuring out better ways of being fully who you are while navigating a difficult world. And we can talk about it in the Q&A if it comes up. The last thing I want to say about what is the work, it was second last thing rather, is facing your shadows and your patterns. Um, when I was when I was working in corporate, I left my corporate job for the first time and I went to a smaller company and I thought I'd be happy there. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. I loved the people there. I loved the work that I did. But I couldn't believe that some of the struggles that I had had in my previous workplace were coming up again here. And I was like, Auntie, what is it that people don't understand about me? Then I moved to another company, and then I was like, okay, this one will be better. Again, I had a much nicer job, much more linked to the kind of work that I was good at, much more precise to my skill sets. But still, I struggled with similar things until I realized that, okay, maybe some of the stuff is me, and some of my patterns, the way I respond when there are people who are smarter than me, the way I respond when there are people who are more powerful than me, the way I respond when I don't know a topic and I'm thrust in the deep end. These are my patterns, and I've got patterns that I've learned. Some work for me, some don't work for me. Or have never worked for me. And so learning to look at those head on and not pretend like it's everybody else when some of the stuff is me, has been really helpful for me to flourish in different spaces. Because the reality is you take yourself everywhere you go. The second point that I wanted to make, second big point that I wanted to make is about this matter of cognitive dissonance. And I guess this links with you take yourself wherever you go. And cognitive dissonance in psychology is about the mental discomfort, psychological discomfort that we feel when what we believe and what we know is true is different to what we live and what we experience. This is cognitive dissonance. A lot of people, I believe, end up in depression and burnout because they have to handle and live in a lot of cognitive dissonance, constantly living and experiencing things that are other than what they believe and what they feel, and have to maintain it. In my mind, fulfillment comes when there's less and less of cognitive dissonance. And so in my mind, understanding where this discrepancy lies in our work life, in our home life, in our personal style, in our personal being, is one of the ways that we can flourish and one of the ways that we can grow. And so for me, I think in order to be successful in the places where you work, one must try as much as possible with every team you work in, with every new job that you take, to be making intentional choices that bring that closer and closer to each other, where your values and where you work are aligned, where the work that you do and the things you believe in are aligned, where what you do every day is aligned with the thoughts that occupy your mind. And the more we do this, I think the more fulfilled we can be. The last thought I'll leave with us is about growth. We're asked a lot of questions about how does one grow and how can one nurture their professional development. And I guess there are typical pat answers that speak about, do your MBA, or whatever, do some additional courses, supplement your skill sets, etc., which I think are true. But I just want to offer four things that I think may be alternative or additional things that I think one can focus on in order to improve their professional development. The one is coaching. I think coaching is underrated. I think people wait to have coaches until they're in a company that can pay for their coaching. People wait for an executive development program. People wait for all kinds of reasons and don't get coaches for their own self-development. And I think coaches are really good because they can help you see some of the things that I was talking about in personal mastery. They can help you have tools and skills on how to deal with it. For example, one of the things that one of my coach said, and at that time I was working in a business where I was in an exco and I was the only female and I was the youngest female there. And one of the things she said to me is pay attention. And also my Enneagram, my personality Enneagram is a 2, which is a helper type. And so what she said to me is never make the tea. Never. When you get to a meeting, do not be the one who offers tea to everybody, because what that does is it reinforces the stereotype that you are now, oh, the girl is now here in the room. You are the one that's always helping, you are there to serve. And it was like, no, don't do that. It was important for me because that is my default setting. That is my default setting. Maybe it's not an issue for other people, but for me, it was critical. She spoke to me about where to sit in a room. She spoke to me about, do you recognize when your voice goes smaller? When you're speaking about certain people, you don't project, you speak softer and softer. Who are those people? Why do they make your voice go smaller? Pay attention to those things. So those things were very helpful to me because they helped me recognize things like where do I cower? Where do I give away my power? Where am I afraid to speak? Which people make me afraid? And why do those people make me afraid more than others? In which spaces am I happy to be my vivacious selves, etc.? So anyway, coaching is one of them. Second is therapy. The reality is all South Africans have gone through a trauma of different kinds. We have a high trauma society. Many people experience at least four types of major trauma in their lifetimes. And so when you have experienced trauma, you learn trauma responses and you find yourself in a situation, you don't know why you're behaving a certain way. No matter how you've thought and thought about it, you've prepared yourself, trauma responses are trauma responses, and you find yourself freezing. So I think therapy is important. I don't think one needs to go to therapy because they're mad or because they're depressed or because they've broken down. We don't have to wait for that. And I think some portion of talk therapy is necessary. The third thing is skills and experiences that are exportable across parts of the system. And the thing about this one is that people will ask what types of skills those are. And my answer is that it depends on which part of the healthcare system you're interested in. So you can be in provision of healthcare, that is a part of the healthcare system. And as a provider of healthcare, there are different skills you need to learn. How to write a referral note, how to make notes, learn ICD-10 coding, those kinds of things. So those skill sets are exportable. You can take them to somewhere else, but they're specific to the type of industry. The part of the industry you're interested in. So I think it's important for people to decide, even if it's for now, it may not be forever, but for now, what part of the industry are you interested in? Provision, administration, clinical risk management. Do you want to work in an enabler of the healthcare system? Some people are interested in tech. Some people, even though they are doctors, they've got a specific interest in tech. And there's so many parts of tech. You can be interested in user experience. You can be interested in apps. You can be interested in AI. You can be interested in so many parts. Are you interested in management? Are you interested in policy? Are you interested in research? So pick a part and then figure out what skills you may need to supplement and get experience in that area. And that's a good way to grow. Or you may decide, I've been in the provision space for a long time, I'd like to branch out. Then you try to get experience and skill sets. To the extent that you can get some of those experience and skill sets in your existing workplace, I would suggest that you do that first, because sometimes it's difficult to get in the space if you've got no skills at all. But you can get them sometimes in the area, in the workplace that you work in, because most things in the healthcare system need all of these things at the same time. And then the last thing, which is my closing comment, is about relationship building. Relationships are everything, guys. They're everything, not because you are going to try get someone to get you in. That's not the only reason relationships are important, but they're the currency that everything is built on. When you're wanting to refer a patient, you'll refer a patient to somebody you've got a relationship with. When you're wanting somebody to help you with a CV, you will speak to somebody that you know. You are not going to speak to cold call someone to look at your CV. Whether you are wanting someone to coach you for free, maybe you don't have money and you're wanting to barter skills, and you want someone to give you a heads up, help me understand this. You go along the lines of relationships. And as much as you can invest in building relationships and learning how to build relationships, what makes it hard for you to build relationships, I think you can get very far. I think that's as much as I can say, Judy, in the time that sorry, Zanele, in the time that you've given me. I'm going to stop until there are questions and allow the other people to actually have a chance.
Yo, thank you very much, Lungi. Wow, you are starting us on a very, very high note and a very high standard. I hope that we're going to keep that throughout the seminar, but you've gotten us off with a bang. One of the things or the nuggets that I've picked up from you in particular, also being in the management space, personal mastery. Personal mastery is a thing, and it translates across. And somebody told me that without, and I'm going to reduce it to discipline. It's so much more than that, but I'll reduce it to discipline. But without having that, you cannot then expect to be successful in all areas of your life. So personal mastery is a thing. You need to be able to say, how do I ensure that I'm meeting all the demands in the certain areas of my fields? How do I ensure that I'm keeping myself current, keeping up with the family? How do I hold myself accountable to myself as well for my well-being? So personal mastery, it's much broader than just self-discipline, but it's something that is key, and it's something that is not easy to get to. Otherwise, I think everybody would be like flying. But I like that you picked up that skill. You also brought up the issue of cognitive dissonance. And I honestly need to say that I have seen how that can make people very unhappy in the workplace, actually make a person that could be a future leader or somebody that has, the potential to be innovative, but they are in a place and they end up being just a production level person with that cognitive dissonance because there's just that gap. But what you said before that, when you said and noted that I first had to analyze myself from place to place to see, okay, what was I adding that was not working out for me in these settings? So obviously the insight comes first, and you need to look at yourself. But once you've identified that and you understand yourself and you've located where you'd want to be, it then makes sure that you align wherever you are to what actually resonates with you. And that would then come and sort out these issues of cognitive dissonance between what you're living or working and what is the reality. I really, really liked those gems that you gave. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, yeah. I'm going to then move on to our next. We've got Dr. Nkuli Buikuzo, who is our next speaker. I must say, Dr. Nkuli Buikuzo does not know this, but she is one of the first speakers that I knew about before I even knew she was going to be a speaker. She is the CEO at Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, and I've gotten to know about her through my friend. It's Dr. Khupulang Magano Ndebele, who is heading up your radiology department there. So through my conversations with your friend, I've had interactions and heard your name a couple of times, and she's had nothing but positive things to say about you. So, Dr. Nkuli, welcome to our webinar. You are at the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, which I'm interested in as well because you guys are a hybrid model. You are a private-public partnership, which is quite interesting. And I also now hear that you sit on the chalkboard. You are the vice chair there. Well done and congratulations on that. I was like, yes, I recently just became the national vice chair of SAMA. So I was like, there's another female vice chair in the house. And you also work with the McDonald's House Foundation, the charity foundation. So that's a lot that's on your plate. And it's nice to finally put a face to this name that I've heard of before. And I'm interested to hear on what you've got to say around career pathing. Over to you, Dr. Bikuto.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Danele, and good evening to all the attendees. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and it was so great listening to Dr. Lungi Nyati just now. So I'm going to talk about career pathways and navigating. It's not so much of a presentation, but I think it will help just to guide my story this evening. I just want to make sure you're able to see the presentation. Please do let me know.
It has not yet come.
We are, okay, right.
Yes.
Am I right now? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you so much. Perfect. Thank you so much. So firstly, it would be, as I was thinking about this topic and chat and just trying to prepare, it would be remiss for me not to, when you talk about career and the choices and the way that we navigate this route, it would be important for me to reflect on, I graduated 20 years ago from medical school this year, so it's 20 years. And a lot has shifted and changed in the landscape. Some of the things that were easier 20 years ago are not quite the same now. And so it's important when you talk about careers that you recognize that things have shifted. For example, the whole issue of job security, especially within the public health sector in South Africa. Never in my 20 years did I ever think doctors would not have employment, and more doctors will be pushed into the private sector, even though we need doctors in the public sector in South Africa. When we started 20 years ago, your worry was about, am I going to get my first choice, versus am I even going to be offered a job at all, which is our current reality. Ease of access to opportunities right now is so much more difficult. For us, it was easier to get into a registrar position. So you could literally move community service, go into a registrar position. Right now, you need a couple of years of medical officer time under your belt. You need certification. You need to have a Part 1 exam. You're almost a cook specialist by the time you're even able to enter into a registrar program. So times have changed. Of course, certain things are better right now. There's OSD implementation. The pay is better. So there's a lot of work that has gone in. The hours are slightly better than what they were during our time. And then, of course, there's this great technology that has, grown over the last 20 years. There's now AI that we can leverage off, but it's also changing the way in which we work and practice medicine. So I think it's important to reflect on where are we now and what currently is our landscape before we talk about navigating careers. So for me, I'll obviously leverage a lot on my own personal experience and why I shifted away from clinical medicine. And I must say, I always think I've never thought of myself as shifting away from clinical medicine, because for me, it's always about there's a patient at the center of my career journey, and the proximity from the bedside really didn't matter, because there's a patient and a love of medicine that is dictating my journey, regardless of where I find myself. And so there are a lot of push and pull factors that make us make the decisions that we make. For me personally, the one thing was about my passion and personal interest. I mean, we all do medicine for various reasons. We're passionate about it. When I got into medical school, the first thing I wanted to be a surgeon. I was very much sure of that, a pediatric surgeon specifically. But by the time I left medical school, because of some of the exposure and experiences, I wanted to be in community health and do something different. And so exposure and what you're exposed to very much determines the career in which you choose and you go into. I remember when I was in 5th year, I think it was 5th year or 4th year, we had a rural rotation at Wits University in Chilidini Hospital, and we had to spend some time also at Bushbuck Ridge in Tinswalo Hospital. And that whole experience and exposure to rural healthcare made me realize there's something bigger beyond the hospital. There's a whole healthcare system which impacts the way in which our patients present in a hospital and what happens to them after they leave. And so what is that system? And I sort of got interested in public health. The lecturers that we're exposed to, the consultants that we're exposed to as junior doctors and medical students also impact the careers that we go into. And so it's not just a question of is it clinical or not clinical, but it's really about who are the people who make the impression on you to want to follow a certain career pathway. And then one of the things I quickly realized was the issue of family and lifestyle considerations. We make it, sometimes we don't think it's important, but some of us, we made a decision earlier on that family is important. What kind of lifestyle do I want to have? I remember when I was very early as an intern, one of the more senior doctors said to me, we all have different paths that we take. We're not in competition with one another. So what is the thing that works best for you? And for me, family and lifestyle was very important. My mental health, back in the day already, I thought I want to have time for myself. And so I chose a different path. And fortunately, there are so many paths in medicine for us to choose from, and so that's the path that I chose for myself. And I moved away from the idea of being a surgeon, a pediatric surgeon specifically, and I wanted to follow the route of public health. And like I said, sometimes the process is gradual, that as you go through working in certain circumstances, certain things will push you out. Sometimes a decision can be abrupt. A decision is made for you. As lots of people currently right now aren't getting positioned in the public health sector, they have to pivot and open a private practice. They have to pivot and go into different parts of the healthcare system, not by choice, but because it's dictated to by the current circumstances. And of course, the general pressure of work. Currently, we are seeing higher and higher levels of litigation and pressure within the medical sphere, and more people want to go in different directions instead of staying in the traditional route. And so the pressure of work itself can be a push factor out of clinical medicine. So what did I do, and what can you do to prepare yourself for change? Because as long as medical school is the 6 years that it takes to get a medical degree, we realize soon enough when you move into management areas, like some of us have moved into, that there has to be some sort of preparation into going into some of these roles. Just because you're a great doctor, I soon learned that it doesn't therefore make you a good manager or a good leader. And so what are the things that I've had to do to make sure that you can prepare yourself, you are at least very ready to take on different roles outside of the bedside? When Dr. Lungi has already mentioned earlier the whole issue of mentors and coaching, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having to lean onto knowledge of people that have gone ahead of you. I've had wonderful mentors in my life, and it doesn't always have to be a formal process. Coaching is one thing, it's very structured, but when you have a mentor, it can be informal, somebody who guides you, somebody you learn from, and I'd recommend that you get a mentor. And this is not about, and a coach, this is not about the age. It's at different parts in your career where you need people to be helping you along, to be guiding you along. And the analogy I like is sports. I'm a huge sports fan, that even the most successful athletes, they still have coaches. You have a nutritional coach, you have a technical coach. In soccer, different types of people are coaching you to achieve certain objectives in your career. So it would be important if you can approach someone and get a coach to help you along in your career. So I've had a few of those, and even in my role right now as a CEO, I have 3 mentors that I work with all the time, because there are certain things you can learn from a book, You can learn from an MBA, a qualification, but when it comes to management specifically, a lot of things you learn on the job. So it's important to have people who've walked the journey before. Another thing is about making yourself stand out. And what I mean by that is that my first management opportunity, which was at Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital, I managed to get that opportunity because I took on roles early on in my career that people did not necessarily, or jobs that people didn't necessarily like. There was a backlog at Charlotte during my studies as a public health medicine specialist. There's something that I needed to do, and I went in there and assisted Charlotte, and I didn't necessarily have to do that. And then 3-4 years later, I applied for the job, and the person whom I assisted was part of the interview. So make yourself stand out so that you become memorable when you move on. That's completely important, especially nowadays when the competition is so high. So many people have many outstanding and great qualifications. So what is the thing about you, that will make somebody take you on in a job that you're not necessarily qualified in, or you don't have the experience or expertise in, but make yourself stand out very early on in your career. We've spoken about this also earlier, that it's important to continue to study and continuous professional development. For me, going into the public health field really opened up a different world that did not exist in medical school. The whole idea of leadership, of management, of a healthcare system, healthcare finance. Finance is a big issue that I believe should be taught in medical school. It's something that a lot of doctors, as I continue to work, it's something that's very difficult, not difficult technically, but just conceptually to grasp and how do things work. And so that's something that we should be taught, and we should be competent. In. So as I continued in my leadership role, those are things that I had to learn along the way. So what does finance mean? Operations mean? Governance, and all of those things. And so learn all of those so that you are able to be a good fit for whichever role. And like Dr. Lungi said, if you want to choose a role, whether you're in healthcare funders, whether you're in research, or wherever you are, equip yourself with the knowledge so that you are competent when you do the role. Another thing was about, for me, just starting with an open mind, and don't feel like because I am a doctor, I will know everything. It's okay. Start with an open mind, learn and contribute what you can. There's a lot of things that we bring to the table from our medical degrees, but if you come with an open mind, there's so much more that you can learn. And then another thing that was important for me was the courage to take for change, the courage to take calculated risks. When I moved to the hospital where I work right now, it was actually a salary cut. Not a big one. Nobody wants a salary cut. But I took a salary cut because I thought I want a different opportunity to where I am. And oftentimes we're afraid to take opportunities, because who has done this before? Maybe I lose this and that. But I had to take that opportunity because I knew where I wanted to get to. And it has opened up a different world for me. So you need to have the courage to make the change and take calculated risk, especially when you're moving away from clinical medicine, which is our comfort zone, which is something we know very well. But there's so many other opportunities that we can definitely make a difference from a medical background. And then lastly, again, I think Dr. Lungi mentioned this one, you must continuously grow your network. That's another skill that we don't get taught a lot of because we are experts in our field. We know our work. We're not really taught how do you interact and grow your network and know people. And again, it's not about knowing people so that they can open doors for you, but it's about exchange and even you opening doors for other people. So continuously grow your network beyond just medical doctors, lawyers, whoever, people in different industries, and learn and learn from that. And for us I'm currently operating in an NGO hospital. And so when you're an NGO, you need to interact with many people because you want them to invest in your institution. And not all those people are doctors. So how do you grow your network and are able to communicate with people who have a different background from you? And so preparation is important if you want to pivot. That doesn't matter which area you want to go into, but make sure that you're prepared to take whichever role that you are interested in. And then lastly, I'm sure I'm running out of time now. My key takeaway messages from the career that I followed. Like I've said at the beginning of my presentation, that a lot of the time, for the longest time, I thought I'm no longer a doctor. I'm no longer a doctor because I'm so far from the bedside. But that is completely not true, because what has guided what I do is the patient is continuously at the center. The patient, the community, and my genuine love for medicine. So whether you find yourself in a corporate, in a beautiful corner office, at a medical scheme, at the end of the day, you're within a healthcare system. The healthcare system is broad. There is funding, there is governance, there is the technology, there is research. There is so much more to medicine, and all of it contributes to the health outcomes of patients. So your proximity to the bedside does not determine whether or not you're a physician. And so really, when you're thinking of which career to follow, do the research, learn about wherever you want to go, talk to people who are already there. I have 2 mentees right now, and I realize that a lot of the time, especially as women, you don't ask. Ask the question, pick up the phone, call whoever. Don't sort of, what do you call it? You shortlist yourself out of opportunities. Be brave enough to pick up the call, whoever, and ask the question. So how did you get to where you want to? How did you get to where you are? And a lot of people, you'll be surprised, are willing to share information in terms of whichever career you want to choose from. So I just like to end on that note to say, please, you're still a doctor, whether you're a manager, a CEO, or wherever you are sitting, we're all working towards the good of a patient. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boykuto. I think what you've said is very important, and you've spoken directly to the issue of multiple career pathing, because we walk out of medical school and 6 disciplines. Literally, that's what you think medicine revolves around, until you actually understand the broadness of what a health system is built on. And thank you for highlighting that. For instance, who would have expected that there would be a demand for health economists? Here we are ahead of the NHI, and that is also, one of the leading skills that we're looking for. So you definitely highlighting, that need, and that understanding that we have to have diversity, and that all of it is part of health systems and part of servicing the patient. Thank you very much for that. Keeping the standard up. I really, really am impressed with this panel. If I must say so for myself, I think we've outdone ourselves as the Women's Wing with the caliber of women that we've managed to get today. Colleagues, our next speaker that I need to introduce, uh, yo, I don't even know where to start. I think everybody must just get comfortable. We have Dr. Judy Dlamini. Dr. Judy's bio, it does not feel like this is one person. It feels like it's a couple of lifetimes lived and then combined in one body. So, Dr. Judy is big in academia. She's vice chancellor at Wits. She sits on the Wits Gordon Medical Center board. She has also been in business, where she's a trustee of certain, not even one entity, a couple, and with a lot of that being philanthropical work that she does. She's also an author. I'm hearing would say she's written 3 books. One called The Other Story, one called Grow and Be Great. The other is Equal but Different. Just on the sideline of this conversation, Dr. Dlamini, I think I need to get those books from you signed, please. We can arrange that on the side. Those sound very interesting. Where you found the time to write not 1 but 2 but 3 books with the work that you've been doing, I don't understand. You also have been doing, other work that speaks to women, where you've been part of the GBV Response Fund. You also are a director of the SA SME Fund.
Mhm.
Not only that, colleagues, She's academic and business, but she's also had her time in the private sector. She's been with Anglo American, she's been with the pharmaceutical industry, she's even been with Woolworths. And you ask yourself, where did she find the time to do all of this? But yeah, she's also gotten some honorary doctorates, where she got an honorary doctorate from Nelson Mandela for business, and from my alma mater, UKZN, where she got an honorary doctorate in economics. Um, yeah, she then also has been given a few awards. She's been given an African Economic Builder Award. She's been given a UNISA Leadership in Practice Award. She's been given a Gender Mainstreaming Award at the Beacon Africa Awards. Really, this is a life that I don't understand how it was all lived in one body in one time. And I really think now when you reflect back, you don't know how you've done and accomplished it all. But for me, I'm getting my books please signed at the end of this. We'll talk on this conversation. But we look forward, get to your talk. So over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zanele. I listened to my previous colleagues on the panel, and more specifically, Dr. Nkuli spoke about qualifying 20 years ago. I qualified 40 years ago. So I'm ancient. So when we talk about when did I get the time, I've been around for a very long time. But thanks very much, Dr. Zanele Pigicha. 40 years ago, I never thought I would actually speak to the vice chairperson of summer, let alone anything else. So it's an honor. A lot of our trailblazers and our matriarchs have opened the way for us, and that's why we celebrate August in this country. And I want to recognize Summer, the Women's Wing, for having this platform to address issues that tend to affect women more, because as you know, men and women are treated differently in the world in general. So it's important, therefore, that we are deliberate about how we empower them. So I've been asked to speak to confidence in practice, and I genuinely mean it when I say what confidence. And that's because I never started off with confidence. Medicine was very convenient for me at the time, partly because I had passion for it, or mainly, but also because those days you could afford to be an introvert, be shy, lack confidence completely, just use your brain and hard work and be able to thrive. So it was not too difficult for shy ones with no confidence. So on that slide, I actually have just one slide. And there are two reasons for that. The first one is that it will focus me. And also, I believe that if I can put it in one slide, it will be quite easy for people to follow the journey, which is what I call the slide. So my first question is the building or the buying of confidence, because some people are born confident. They are born extroverts. That's one part of it. But the world also has an impact on how we see ourselves. As a result, they can either build confidence to us just the way you were born in a country that celebrates a certain race or gender. When you are born having the privilege of those social attributes, it's easy for you. So it's easy to be confident. But if you have social attributes that work against you where you're born, then you have to work that much harder, either to build the confidence or to buy the confidence. And by buying confidence, I mean investing in yourself. So to just take you way back, more than 6 decades ago, to a 4-year-old girl who dreamt of being a doctor, to bring context to what I have to share. And the dream was misplaced because I didn't come from a family of doctors. There was no family member who had become a doctor, but it was built from seeing someone who's one. So role modeling is important. So how did I achieve it then? Education and hard work. What I have learned is that education and hard work buys you confidence. That's the first point. The second point is that finding your purpose and living it also gives you confidence. There is something about knowing why you are here and knowing that you are doing exactly what you were born to do. It gives you confidence because no one else can tell you otherwise. You know you were born to do this and you know you were born to live this life. That gives you confidence. So, talking to the many generations that I have no doubt are listening, uh, being a baby boomer, I think I'm the only one on the panel or actually in the room, virtual room. But I know there are millennials, there are Gen Zs, even Gen Alphas. Uh, One thing that I've learned, and I would really like to share, in spite of the challenges that we have, where you have doctors with no jobs, education still is the best investment you can do on your self-development. It has allowed me to pivot, and I've pivoted to so many spaces where I didn't know I could actually venture into. So when you say, Dr. Zanele, where did you get the time and the inclination to do the different things? I bought the confidence to do them through investing in education on myself. I have studied in every decade that I've been allowed. I'm in my seventh decade, being 66. And every year, every decade I have studied. And the beauty with that is that you become humble. You know, there's something that was said by Dr. Nkuli that sometimes we've got this, I'm a medic, I can, do this. And sometimes you can take it to an arrogant level. But the beauty with continuously educating yourself is that it humbles you. You realize just how much you don't know. You meet people that you never thought you would meet, and you get a wider perspective in life. And I really believe that having a broader perspective gives you confidence because you realize that I can survive in this sector, I can survive in this context, therefore, I can survive anywhere else. But also, humility, in my view, is one of the best characteristics that you can either be born with or that you can learn. And I plead with everyone in the room that learn to be humble, because when you humble, you are approachable. A leader that is approachable is so much better at achieving her purpose than a leader who's arrogant, who knows it all, and doesn't learn from people. One of the things that I've learned in the sectors that I've been in is that the person that cleans your office, you can learn from her and treat her with respect, which is the next thing that I'm going to say. Respect matters for you to gain confidence because when you respect yourself, you actually have a way that you perceive yourself that you don't want to betray, but also when you respect the position that you are afforded, you learn the confidence because you respect the position, but also respecting others. So respect in a 360 dimensional way matters, which talks to the values that help you to gain confidence. There's something that was said by Dr. Lungi when she speaks about knowing your weaknesses. It really is knowing yourself. Embrace your weaknesses. A thing that took me very long to learn. I didn't have confidence. I entered boardrooms that I was the only woman sometimes, and I was the only person who's not a core business person. I was an entrepreneur, a medical doctor, but I wasn't a business person that has run a JSE listed company, but I was sitting at the table around people that have run JSE listed companies. And you actually have an imposter syndrome and you think, oh my goodness, what do I know? Know your worth is what I advise you to be conscious of. Know your worth, because sometimes we look at certain parameters and think that if I don't tick those boxes, I'm not good enough. But what we always forget is what you bring to the table, always. I remember speaking to Dr. Vuyo Mahlati, who actually said, you come from the township, uh, embrace it. You come from a working class background, embrace it. When you are at a table with people who don't have those contacts, you've got it. Own it and help them to understand that context. Never feel where you come from is less, therefore you are less. Where you come from is different, and that difference makes you who you are. Embrace it and honor it with pride. And the other thing that I would like to share with us is that, you know, we are privileged. We have these many degrees. We've been exposed to so many things, including some financial independence. But in a country that is so unequal, in a country where the color of poverty is your color and the gender of poverty is your gender, you have an obligation to do something for those that are less privileged than yourself. So as we talk about how you empower yourself, I wanted to make sure I don't over reach in terms of time, but I just want to wrap up. So my challenge, because August month is about call to action, and the action for our country is bigger than us. It's bigger than your career success. It is all those people, those villages, those townships where you come from, where they are still so much behind. What are you doing to make their lot better? One other thing, I have to talk about imposter syndrome, because if you talk confidence, you have to address imposter syndrome. Let's define it, because unless we understand the things that we encounter, then we'll always encounter them and not challenge them. We are not born feeling less as women or as blacks or as women and blacks. The world makes us feel less. The world tells us you are black, therefore you are less. You are a woman, therefore you should do the following. So when you accept that stupid stereotype, you are serving what the world wants us to be. We are not less. Whenever you walk into a room and you feel that look, that attitude that makes you feel less, just smile and remind yourself that you are equal to the best. That is why my first book is called Equal but Different. Yes, we are different, but we equal to the best. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so, so much for, those words, Dr. Dlamini. Um, I just want to make a little bit of a joke. For me, one of the things that actually, I'm speaking to what you're talking about now in terms of imposter syndrome, that actually flipped a switch for me did actually not come from a woman. It came from a man. It was in medical school. His name was Dr. Well, he is Dr. Bandile Hadebe. Um, and, one day, obviously, I was in the SRC, the whole politics and all of that. And one day, he made a comment and said that why are we as women waiting for permission from men to be allowed a seat at the table? I think we were discussing deployment and positions, and he said, why do you as women want to get permission from the men? And that changed a lot in my thinking process, and it pivoted me as a woman to say, you know what, he's absolutely right. As women, we need to take the power into our own hands. I actually always called him the biggest feminist I've ever known, in the way that he was pro-female. Colleagues, looking at the time, okay, we are at the end of what we should have been. I just want to open to our panelists just for some parting shots. We acknowledge that we've got, different generations here, and we'd like to, maybe with the younger ones who are right at the beginning and who maybe might have been inspired and have taken a few nuggets, but are still at the beginning. If you could, go back and speak to that version of yourself that was in medical school, in just a few words, what would you say, or what advice would you give? If we can just start, we can start with Dr. Nyati, then we'll go to Dr. Bikuto and end with Dr. Dlamini. Just those few words to say, if you had the conversation with yourself in medical school, what would you say?
I think I would say the world is so big and you really can do anything. Just start at anything and you'll find your way. This idea of you must have the perfect answer right now, and when you choose now, you're choosing forever in your life is not true. Start anywhere, and the world is huge, and see where you end up.
Sure. Yeah.
And so yes.
Yeah, sure. I think Dr. Lungi took the words right out of my mouth. The thing is, for me, it's, perfect. There's a saying, perfect is the enemy of good. You don't have to get everything perfectly right. Just start. And have and don't be afraid. You are enough. Just that. You're enough. And that's what I would tell my 24-year-old self 20 years ago, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you so much to my fellow panelists. You'll appreciate we go back many, many, many years back. But what I would say to myself is it's going to be a rough ride, but you've got this. And I would also say the world is not according to your plan. Yes, you have your plans, but the universe has other plans. And sometimes you'll feel like the wave is so hard. And if you stick to the plan that you have, you will drown. So sometimes you throw away the plan and follow the current, and somewhere you'll find yourself. So just embrace life, give it your best shot always, and every day strive to be the best version of yourself and give as you receive. That's what I would say. Thank you.
So good, so good, so good.
Yeah. Thank you very much to our wonderful panel. I honestly am honored to have been allowed to facilitate a panel of women of your caliber. And I hope that through the opportunities that I'm very much aware of, that I am privileged to, because women like you came before me. I also do honor what women should be doing in these positions and open the way and make a trail for the next generation. Colleagues, we're now at the end. I would just like to call to action to remind everybody that as the South African Medical Association, we are doing a Women in Medicine Forum. This is going to be on the 18th of October, and it is going to be at Melrose Arch. It's done in conjunction with the South African Health Business Academy. Like we said, Uguti, the landscape is different now in medicine. It's not no longer the way that we used to know it, where it was automatic and you get out. But we will be discussing, women, medicine, and all things business. We look forward to actually seeing you guys there, engaging with you, and having now those deep conversations around these kind of issues. So we really do look forward to seeing you at that event on the 18th of October. And I would like to thank the hard team that is behind the scenes with us as the Women's Wing, your Dianes, your Nileens, your Vezis, your Rainier, who is busy, making sure that everything is running smoothly. They've made sure that we've gotten through this webinar series with no issues, and they support us at all times. I know our CEO is also listening in on this. Thank you, Dr. Nodikita, the CEO of SAMA, for always making sure that you support pro-women initiatives within the organization. And with that being said, colleagues, I'd like to call it a wrap. Let me just check if there's anything. No, I think we're covered, and I think you honestly have said more than enough mouthful. Thank you guys for giving us the time and the space, and I really, really do hope that when I come down in October, I will have the opportunity to meet one of you guys, or at least all of you guys in person at the actual event, if possible. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.